The sky was barely breathing light when she slipped out of the bunkhouse. Dawn stretched thin and pale over the plains like it was unsure it wanted to arrive at all. Her boots in her hands, the dust cold under her bare feet, heart thudding louder than the cicadas had the night before. She told herself not to look back, told herself this was just another leaving. She had done it before, always before anyone noticed, always before roots had time to grow, but this place felt different, and that scared her more than the dark ever had. She pulled her shawl tight, hair unbound, eyes stinging not from the wind but from the thought of him waking up to an empty yard and thinking she had vanished. Like smoke the ranch lay quiet behind her, fences crouched low, barns hulking like patient beasts. Somewhere a horse shifted and snorted. The sound made her freeze. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Steady now. She was not a girl anymore. She was a woman who had survived worse than leaving at dawn. She reminded herself of that as she reached the edge of the corral. The path to the river road just beyond. Freedom just a mile away if she kept moving. She had planned it careful, packed light. No note, no goodbyes, because goodbyes had a way of turning into promises. And promises were the kind of chains she had spent her whole life learning how to break. She did not see him at first. That was the cruelest part. The way hope rose in her chest like a foolish thing. The yard looked empty. No lanterns, no boots by the porch. Just the wind lifting dust and the faint gold of sunrise creeping higher. She took one step, then another, her pulse easing. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe he was still asleep. Maybe this would be clean, simple, quiet. She almost smiled. And that was when the leather creaked, slow and deliberate. The unmistakable sound of a saddle settling under weight. He sat astride his horse at the far end of the yard, hat low, reins loose in one hand, the other resting easy on his thigh, like he had all the time in the world. The horse stamped once, breath steaming, already packed for travel, bedroll tied, neat behind the cantle. He had been ready long before she ever stepped outside. Her stomach dropped. The kind of drop that stole air from lungs and sent memories flooding in whether you invited them or not. Men who followed, men who did not listen, men who thought leaving was a challenge instead of a choice. He did not call out to her, did not move at first, just watched, eyes sharp under the brim, the quiet between them stretched, filled with all the things neither of them had said since she arrived weeks ago. How she had come broken and tired, how he had given her work without questions, how the nights had grown longer and warmer and heavier, with things unsaid. Finally he nudged his horse forward, slow, respectful, stopping a few paces away, far enough not to crowd her, close enough that she could see the concern etched deep in his weathered face. "You were aiming to leave without breakfast," he said, voice low, calm, like he was talking to a spooked mare instead of a woman on the edge of running. She swallowed, lifted her chin. "I was not aiming to wake anyone," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "You did not need to saddle up." His mouth twitched. Not a smile, something sadder. "I reckon I did," he said, sun finally catching the silver at his temples. She took a step back, instinct screaming. "I do not belong here," she said, the words tumbling out now. "I never said I did." He nodded once, slow. "I never said you did. But you were not planning to vanish like you stole something, were you?" That stung, because it was too close to truth. She had stolen peace here, borrowed safety, tasted something like home, and now she was trying to leave before it demanded more than she could give. The wind picked up, lifting her hair, tugging at his coat. He dismounted then, movements unhurried, deliberate, placing himself on the ground like he meant to meet her eye to eye. Not chase, not command, just stand. "I am not here to stop you," he said, and she almost laughed, because men always said that right before they did exactly that. "Then why follow?" she asked, hands clenched around her boots. "Because the world is meaner out there than it is here," he said, "and because you do not walk alone before sunrise unless you are running from something that might still catch you." The truth of it hit hard. Her shoulders sagged just a fraction, enough that he noticed, enough that he softened his voice. "If you still want to go once the sun is up, I will point you to the road and wish you well. But I will not pretend I did not see you leaving." She stood there, dawn fully breaking now, light spilling over the land, painting everything gold and honest. The moment stretched, heavy with choice. She had thought leaving would be quiet, unseen, but he had seen her, and worse, he had understood. Her chest tightened. She did not say yes, did not say no, just looked at the man who had been ready to follow without forcing her to stay. The horse shifted behind him, patient, waiting. And in that stillness she realized this was only the beginning, whether she stayed or rode away. The kind of beginning that changed the shape of her life. The sun climbed higher, and neither of them moved. The sun climbed higher while neither of them spoke. The kind of silence that pressed in on the chest, thick with things that could not be taken back, once said. Finally she turned away from him, walking toward the fence line as if distance might give her courage. He did not stop her, did not reach out, only followed at a respectful pace, boots crunching soft in the dust. When she reached the river road, she stopped, stared at the ribbon of earth winding east. She had walked roads like this before, roads that promised escape and delivered loneliness, hunger, and the kind of danger that wore a friendly smile. "I do not know where I am going," she admitted at last, voice rough, "but I know I cannot stay if staying means pretending this place does not matter to me." He leaned against the fence, hat pushed back now, eyes narrowed against the light. "Staying never means pretending," he said. "It means choosing, and choosing always costs something." They followed the road together for a while, not riding, not partying, just walking side by side with the horses trailing slow behind, the land opening wide around them, grass waving like a restless sea. She told herself she was only walking until the words ran out, that once the truth was spoken, she would keep going alone. But the truth had a way of unfolding slowly. She spoke of towns she had fled, of a man whose temper burned hotter than whiskey, of nights spent hiding bruises and mornings spent convincing herself she deserved them. He did not interrupt, his jaw tightening with every mile. She spoke of the moment she finally ran, of the sound of his voice behind her, promising he would find her, and how every dawn since then had felt like borrowed time. When she finished, the road felt longer, heavier, as if it carried her past on its back. He stopped walking, turned to face her fully. "If he comes here," he said, voice low and dangerous, "he will leave in worse shape than he arrives." She shook her head, fear flaring. "That is exactly why I must not stay." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain from far off. He studied her like a man weighing a difficult truth. "I have buried men who thought running solved things," he said, "and I have buried men who thought staying made them strong. There is no clean answer, only the one you can live with." She looked at him then, really looked, at the scars she had not noticed before, the way his shoulders carried old weight. "What happened to you?" she asked, surprising them both. His gaze drifted to the horizon. "I stayed once," he said, "when leaving would have been easier. My wife was sick. The land was dry, the debts high. I stayed because love does not care about easy. I buried her under a cottonwood and kept the ranch because leaving felt like another kind of death." The honesty of it cut deep. She felt her defenses crack, just a little, enough to let doubt seep in. By midday they returned to the ranch, not as a decision but as a pause. The sky had darkened, clouds rolling low and heavy. She told herself she would rest, eat, then go before nightfall. But the house felt different now, charged with unspoken truths. She helped him mend a broken rail, hands working side by side, every brush of his sleeve sending a spark she refused to name. When thunder rolled she flinched, memories rising sharp and unwelcome. He noticed, set his hammer down. "You are safe here," he said, not as a promise but a statement of fact, the kind meant to anchor. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it scared her more than leaving ever had. The storm broke hard and fast, rain hammering the roof, trapping them inside. The fire crackled, shadows dancing across the walls. She sat across from him, boots finally back on her feet. The distance between them, measured in feet but feeling like miles. "Tell me why you really left at dawn," he said gently. She closed her eyes. "Because if I stayed one more day," she whispered, "I would have hoped, and hope is dangerous for women like me." He did not argue, did not dismiss her fear. Instead, he said, "Hope is dangerous for everyone, but it is also the only thing that ever changed me." The rain softened outside. Her chest ached with the weight of wanting something she had sworn never to reach for again. Late that afternoon, a rider appeared on the ridge, distant but unmistakable. Her blood turned to ice. She knew the shape of that man even from afar, the way he sat a horse like it was an extension of his anger. She staggered back, whispering his name like a curse. The cowboy was on his feet instantly, hand on his gun, eyes hard. "Get inside," he said, calm but unyielding. She shook her head, terror and guilt twisting together. "This is why I must leave," she said. "This is what follows me." He looked at her then with something fierce and steady. "No," he said. "This is what you finally stopped running from the rider," stopped at the fence line, calling out, his voice carrying ugly familiarity. The cowboy stepped forward, placing himself between them without hesitation. Words were exchanged, sharp and tense, the past colliding with the present in a cloud of dust and rain-soaked earth. She watched from the doorway, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to flee, but her feet would not move. She saw the way the cowboy stood his ground, not posturing, not reckless, just immovable. The rider spat threats, promises of return, but something in the cowboy's eyes made him hesitate. Finally, he turned away, retreating with a glare that promised this was not finished. The dust settled slow, the silence afterward deafening. When it was over, she sank onto the step. Shaking, he crouched beside her, close but not touching, letting her breathe. "He is not gone," she said, voice breaking. "No," he agreed, "but neither are you." The truth of it landed heavy. She had stayed, had faced the thing she feared most, and the world had not ended. Yet the road still waited, and so did the choice. The storm clouds thinned, light breaking through. She looked at him with new understanding, realizing that leaving now would cost more than it ever had before. The question was no longer whether she could stay, but whether she was brave enough to build something worth defending. Night fell uneasy over the ranch. Stars, sharp and cold, the kind of night that carried trouble on its back. She barely slept, every sound pulling her awake. The creak of the house, the distant howl of a coyote, memories prowling her thoughts. When dawn finally came, it brought no peace, only certainty. He would return. Men like that always did. The cowboy was already up, checking fences, rifle cleaned and laid within reach, movements calm but purposeful. She watched him from the doorway, realizing this was not bravado or anger driving him. It was resolve, the steady kind built from years of standing his ground against loss. The rider came just after noon, not alone this time, two men flanking him like bad ideas made flesh, dust rolling ahead of them, the land itself seeming to recoil. Her heart hammered, but she did not hide. She stepped onto the porch, spine straight, fear burning hot but no longer paralyzing. The cowboy moved beside her, close enough that she felt the solid presence of him. The rider sneered, claiming ownership, speaking her name like a leash. She answered before the cowboy could, voice shaking but clear. "I am not yours." The words cracked something open inside her, the kind of crack that lets light in, even when danger looms. The tension snapped fast. A shove, a hand reaching for a gun, the world narrowing to sound and movement. The cowboy reacted without hesitation. Gunsmoke, ripping the air, horses screaming, men shouting. She dropped to the ground as bullets tore splinters from the porch rail. The fight was brief and brutal, dust and fear mixing thick. When it ended, one man lay wounded, the others fleeing hard. The rider dragging his injured pride and bleeding arm away from the land he thought he could claim. Silence followed, heavy and ringing. The cowboy stood breathing hard, unharmed, eyes locked on her like he needed to see her still standing to believe it was truly over. She rose slowly, legs trembling, the reality of what had happened crashing in waves. "It is done," she whispered, not quite believing it. The cowboy nodded. "Mostly," he said. "They will not come back here, not after today." She searched his face for doubt and found none, only quiet certainty, the kind that felt like shelter. Tears came then, sudden and fierce, years of running bleeding out all at once. He did not pull her close, did not rush her grief, just stood with her until she leaned into him of her own will. And when she did, it felt like crossing an invisible line she could never uncross. Days passed, then weeks, the ranch settling back into rhythm, fences mended, cattle counted, life insisting on moving forward. She worked beside him, not as a guest anymore, but as someone invested, someone who stayed through sun and storm. The nightmares faded slow, replaced by tired muscles and honest mornings. Sometimes she still walked to the river road at dawn, standing there quietly, testing herself. Each time she turned back without bitterness, without fear, understanding now that leaving was no longer escape. It would be surrender. One evening they sat on the porch watching the sky burn red, the land stretching endless and forgiving. "You never asked me to stay," she said softly. He nodded. "You stayed anyway. That matters more." She smiled then, small but real, realizing that love, like land, needed room and patience, not fences built from fear. She took his hand, the gesture simple but final, the kind that said I am here without needing to say it aloud. The seasons turned, her past losing its sharp edges, becoming something she carried without letting it steer her. She learned the ranch, learned him, the quiet strength, the way he loved without demanding, protected without owning. She found herself laughing again, planning, dreaming, things she once thought foolish. The dawns came and went, no longer something to flee from but something to meet head-on. She had tried to leave at dawn once, believing survival meant distance, but the cowboy had been saddled, not to chase or claim, only to walk beside her until she chose, and in choosing to stay she found what the road had never given her. Not safety without risk, but a life worth standing her ground for. The sun rose over the ranch, steady and sure, and this time she watched it from home.